This is part 3 of the Chapter 5 lecture notes, and we're starting on slide number 20. What we're looking at here is an illustration of cleavage or tension lines. And basically, these are lines that are oriented in the direction that the collagen fibers and elastic fibers are oriented. Cleavage lines are important in surgery. If the surgeon makes the incision parallel to the cleavage lines, there's going to be faster healing and there's going to be less scar tissue. If you look at picture C, for example, and then if you look at picture B, that was made perpendicular to the cleavage lines, and there's going to be more scarring. And then it has something about stretching causing stretch marks. Now, the subcutaneous tissue or the hypodermis is actually deep to the skin. It's not considered a part of the skin, but we still study it because it supports the skin. The tissue is loose connective areolar tissue mixed with adipose tissue. The hypodermis contains about half the body's fat stores or half the body's adipose tissue. And the adipose tissue functions as an energy source, also insulation and padding. The reason that subcutaneous or hypodermal injections the reason for those injections are so that you do not hit like a major organ. It's showing you the intradermal injection, which would be just like a tattoo. It's the only thing I can think of. And then the subcutaneous injection would be into the hypodermis, the fatty tissue of the hypodermis, and then intramuscular injection, like you would have to have, I don't know, the only thing I can think is a diabetic that has to have a glucagon shot that has to be injected into a large muscle. So we're going to move on and talk about hair because the integumentary system consists of the skin and also hair and nails and glands. So hair is found everywhere on the human body except the palms of the hands, the soles of the feet, lips, nipples, parts of the external genitalia, and then the distal segments of the fingers and toes. So there are areas on the human body that are hairless. Everywhere except the palms of the hands, the soles of the feet, the lips, the nipples, parts of the external genitalia, and then the distal segments of the fingers and toes near the fingertips. Lanugo is the delicate, unpigmented hair of the fetus, and that typically is gone by the time the baby is born, but sometimes not. And then terminal hair is long, coarse, pigmented hair. This is what like you find on your head. You find this on your scalp, your eyelids, your eyebrows, and the under the arms, the axilla, the pubic area, and the face after puberty. Then the other type of hair that's fine is called vellus hair, and that is the fine, short hair on the rest of the body. So terminal hair is the coarse hair that you find on your head and under your arms, and then vellus is the fine hair that you find tends to be lighter in color most times. Now, far as the hair structure, if we do a cross section through the shaft of a hair, basically the very center is the medulla. The layer outside of the medulla is called the cortex. And then outside of that, to protect the hair is the cuticle. And then this layer that's shown here in yellow is the internal epithelial root sheath. So it's just a sheath around the root structure. The cells in this pink area are the external root sheath. And then outside of that, the very outside is the dermal root sheath. So we're looking at the root of a hair follicle. The matrix is the source of new hair. All right, so in the notes, the shaft of the hair is the part that's above the skin. The root is below the skin. And there are 3 layers of the root. And as we see in the picture, the medulla is the very center, and that's where hair is produced. The cortex forms the bulk of hair. And then the cuticle is the surface of the hair, and that protects the hair. All right. In this structure, we're looking at it's called a longitudinal section, but it's like a cut so that you can see inside the hair from a different view. So we can still see the medulla, we can still see the cortex. The medulla is blue, the cortex is outside of that, and it's purple. And it's showing that this part that's kind of projects up is called the hair papilla. And the hair papilla is a projection into the hair bulb from the dermis, because you know the hair is primarily epidermal tissue. Okay, and I think that's good enough. As far as growth of hair, when you're losing hair a lot, this is this is a good one here. Regular hair loss means that your hair is being replaced. That it doesn't always mean that you're losing your hair and you're never gonna have as much hair. You don't have to be scared. Permanent hair loss is called pattern baldness, and that's the most common cause of permanent hair loss. And it does mostly affect men. Alopecia is spot baldness, and that's usually an autoimmune disorder. There is well, for the hair color, it's caused by the amount and type of melanin, just like with skin. Melanin can be black, brown, and it can also be red. So there's a black, brown melanin, and then there's a red melanin. The erector pili muscle is a smooth muscle that's attached to each hair follicle, and it causes the hair to stand on end and produce goosebumps. So that's the erector pili muscle, and you can see that here. Here's a hair follicle, and then every hair follicle is attached to a sebaceous gland or an oil gland. The erector pili muscle here is attached to the hair follicle, and that will cause it to stand on end. There are 2 types of sweat glands. There's the apocrine sweat gland, which you can see is down in the bulk of that sweat gland is down in the hypodermis. Apocrine sweat glands are also a type of sudoriferous gland. Anyway, the apocrine sweat glands produce the sweat that you have under your armpits that smells, that has an odor. And then the eccrine sweat gland, also a sudoriferous gland. That's just another word for sweat, sudoriferous. But the eccrine sweat gland produces the watery sweat, and it's not attached to a hair follicle. So it produces just the watery sweat that helps cool our body when we're hot. So this page is really, the notes are just on the sebaceous glands or oil glands. They're a type of holocrine gland. They're a holocrine exocrine gland. Exocrine meaning that they secrete their product, the oil is secreted into a duct and onto a surface. So the secretion of the sebaceous gland is going to be through this duct onto the hair surface and onto the surface of the skin. The oily secretion is called sebum, and that's where sebaceous glands comes from. The sebum prevents drying and inhibits some bacteria. Most of the oil glands empty into a hair follicle, with the exception of the lips, the meibomian glands of the eyelids, and the genitalia. These are where you would find sebaceous glands that are not attached to a hair. Then there is the sweat or sudoriferous glands, and there are two types. The watery sweat is produced by eccrine or merocrine glands, and those, remember, no part of the cell is shed. The cell is not damaged in any way when the secretion is released in a merocrine secretion. Holocrine secretion, like the sebaceous glands, is going to, the cell that secretes the sebum is going to be destroyed along with the secretion. But eccrine sweat glands are merocrine glands, and that means that no part of the cell is shed. These are the most common sweat glands, and they're very numerous in the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet. And they produce the watery sweat that is important in regulating body temperature. Apocrine sweat glands are most active, become active at puberty, and this is the type that the top half of the cell is secreted along with the secretion. So with the merocrine or eccrine glands, no part of the cell is shed along with the secretion, the sweat that's secreted. In the apocrine glands, the top half of the cell is shed along with the secretion. And this type of sweat is the type that's found in the axilla or armpits, in the external genitalia area, around the anus. And this is the type of sweat that can have an odor due to the bacteria that feed on that sweat. Then we have ceruminous glands, which are eccrine sweat glands, modified eccrine sweat glands in the external auditory canal, and this is going to produce earwax or cerumen, which functions to prevent dirt and insects from entering the ear. And then mammary glands are modified apocrine sweat glands, and of course they produce milk. The nail, the cuticle of the nail is called the eponychium, and the hyponychium is beneath the free edge. So the hyponychium is here. That's the part of your finger that kind of meets up with your fingernail, okay? And then the cuticle or eponychium is here. Let's see. The lunula is like a half moon shape that you see here at the part where the nail contacts the skin. Let's see, the matrix and the nail bed. The nail matrix, you can see here, and then you can see the nail root. The nail matrix is just like the hair matrix. It's going to produce your fingernail tissue, and then here's the root where the fingernail tissue begins being produced, and then it grows, it elongates. So the matrix again in the nails gives rise to the nail tissue itself.